Hi. It's hard to find a movie or a book plot without a conflict between the good guys or good gals and the bad guys, bad gals. We love it when good overcomes evil and all is well again. Of course, we need the villains to be totally bad, with no shred of decency, if we are to feel good about them being done away with in some fashion. So, movies tend to go to great lengths to portray the bad people as in exaggeratedly evil terms. There's nothing good in them, of course. Now, movies are really fantasies, but they draw us in and invite us to be part of the plot, at least in our imagination. So, our imagination makes it feel real. So we feel like we are right there beside 007 as he blows up the evil minions of the crime organization called SPECTRE. Plots like that entertain us because this is how we really would like life to be. But in real life, there really are no totally good heroes, and there are no totally bad villains. They just don't exist. Life is just full of regular human beings who are a mixture of good and bad. And that feels uncomfortable because we can't be totally certain when dealing with others regarding whether or not they are trustworthy. And uncertainty is very uncomfortable to us human beings. And it's especially uncomfortable to have to face the fact that we ourselves have good and bad in us. So, to clarify things, at least in our own minds, we create an imaginary movie where we are the hero, the one who is right, who is good, who is holy, etc. And people who are different are the villains. They are the ones who are wrong, they're bad, they're unfaithful, etc. This is a way we try to ignore or deny the bad stuff inside us, which feels awful to look at, of course, and it allows us to dismiss any good in the villains and to do awful things to them. In this way of looking at things, in this scenario, we actually need adversaries, the bad people, so that we can feel good about ourselves. Now, needless to say, doing it that way, this dynamic is almost part of our DNA as human beings, it seems. It's difficult to know how this gets passed on to each succeeding generation, but it seems to be that way. But it's a piece of the human puzzle that we haven't dealt with well, and our history shows it. It's been the cause of all war, prejudice, political gridlock, religious persecution, political and religious assassinations, economic inequality, and any other ways we find division as human beings. Operating in that way may be close to being part of our DNA, but unlike our DNA, there are ways we can change it, but only if we consciously do the hard work with consistency, persistence, intention, and a great deal of courage. One thing that is needed if we're going to change that way of doing things is what many therapists call facing your demons. It means to recognize the tendencies and attributes in ourselves that are unpleasant or even ugly. The purpose is not to condemn or berate ourselves, but to remind ourselves that we are like every other person and are in no position to judge or denigrate others. It also allows us to keep an eye on those negative things in ourselves so that we can keep them from controlling our behavior. Unnoticed or unchecked, those negatives can take over when we least expect. Now, on the flip side, viewing ourselves realistically in this way enables us to avoid the awful feeling of thinking we are bad or flawed, because we realize that we are like everyone else, neither better nor worse. So we don't have to cut down others in order to feel good about ourselves. Another part of this work is to shift our view of others. If we can see both the good and bad in ourselves, we're better able to see the good and bad in others. This makes it much more difficult to believe that others are the totally bad villains that need to be destroyed in some way. Looking at them realistically, they become much more like ourselves, with the same strengths and weaknesses, joys and fears, hopes and dreams, etc. When we can see more clearly that others are more like ourselves than they are different, it creates more of a bond rather than a division. This means less violence we inflict upon each other. This type of work is hard and not for the weak of heart. But when one person does the work, it invites the next person to do the work also. And that is how we change the human movie script that seems to hold us captive.